So welcome to my new video. Our today's question is design task manager. Okay, so this type of question is useful and they teach us how to change the data structure according to our use. Okay, so let's start the question. So you have to implement the class task manager class. Okay, so in task manager you are giving a list of tasks. In every task you are like, this is user id, task id and its priority. Okay, this user id, task id and priority, and there are functions we have to implement these. So the void add functions, we have to add the new task with user id, task id and priority. Okay, edit, so you have to edit to the new priority. Okay, and the remove, you have to remove the task which has task id, this is the task id. Okay, and let's see, this is the last function and I am going to start with this function. Just the reason why I'm going to start with the last function is very simple. Like these, all these functions, like all three functions, add, edit and remove, these functions are just for updation. There is no validation or check like these functions are right or wrong. The only validation is this function, the execute top. If this function works fine, correctly, then our all functions are working fine. Okay, and we have to return answer in our execute top function, so we have to think according to this. There is a reason. Okay, so let's start the question. So first let's understand the question. So you have a several tasks. These are the tasks. In every task you have three parameters: user id, task id and its priority. This is user id, task id and priority. So what we can do, we can simply store all these things in our array list. Okay, so this is user id, task id and priority. Okay, so this is one pair. And uh, okay, so 2 user id, 102 20. Okay, so these are the things. Okay, so 3 103, this is the task and this is priority. So execute, in execute top function we have to return the task user id. So we have to return a user id which has high, like this is the user id which has the highest priority. Okay, this is priority, this is 20, this is 15. So we have to return this object, and this object user id is 2, so we have to return a 2. So let's see what we can do. We can simply traverse on this array list and find out which object has maximum, which task has maximum priority. And if the priorities are same, let's see, let's understand it. Okay, highest priority, if the multiple tasks have the same priority, then we have to return the task which has the highest task id. So what we can do, we can just simply store our task which has the highest priority, then we can again traverse, and whichever has highest same priorities, we can then check which has higher tasks. Okay, then we can simply return our answer. But for every time we have to traverse, this is high complexity. Okay, time is big of n, so that's why what we can do, big of 2n, because firstly we have to check for priority, then we have to check for task id. So what we can do, we can store this into priority queue. Okay, priority queue. But in java, like removal of any task is hard in the priority queue, so we can store in into the tree map. Okay, and tree map of what, we are just care about two things. One is uh, priority and second is task id. So we can simply store it like, let me show you. We can create a tree map, of task. Okay, task. So we can simply store, like for 1 101. Okay, this is 2, this, oh, okay, sorry, we have to store task id and priority. So 101 and 10. Okay, 101 and 10, 102 and 20, 103 and 15. Okay, now we are going to sort it according to our priority. So first parameter is priority. If the priority is same, then we are going to sort it according to our task id in descending order. Okay, so which has the most priority? So our task 2. Okay, task 2 is having the most priority, so it comes into the first place and this goes into the last place. Okay, so this is our priority queue, but we have to return the task user id, right? So now I am going to change this data structure to have tree map of task. This is the object task of uh, a task id and our priority. Okay, so I am going to change it now. This is the object task comma user id, guys, because we want user id also. So for every task it has a user id. So let you see how I am going to change our data structure according to use. Okay, this task object contains task id and priority. Okay, so this is our first map. Let's store somewhere here. Okay, this is the tree map of task and user id. Okay, so let's see our functions. Okay, so what we can do, we can simply pick when we have like execute top function. We can simply remove we can simply take our first element, take our first task from our tree map. So let's name it what. Okay, let's name it priority queue. Okay, so we can simply take first element and remove its user id, and after that we have to remove it. Okay, let's see. After executing the task id, we have to remove from the system, and if the user id associated with execute task, if no tasks are available, return -1. So that means if our priority queue, this tree map is empty, so we have to return -1. Okay, otherwise we have to return user id and remove this task. Okay, remove our first task. So this is our first function. Let's see our second function now. So this is our add function. So in add function we are given three parameters: user id, task id and priority. Add function is exactly same. So what we can do, we can simply add our we can simply add pair of task id and priority and map it with user id. Okay, it is very simple. So in our main function, what we can do, in task manager we are going to traverse on our all the tasks. So we are going to traverse on our all the tasks, and after that we are putting like our task id and priority. This is the task, so we are putting it, and after that we are mapping it with user id. So user id, because we have to return user id. Okay, let's see now third function. Third function is edit function. So in edit function we are given a task id and new priority. Okay, so this is the edit function. So update the priority of existing task to new priority. It is guaranteed that the task id exists in the system. Okay, so let's understand our third edit. So guys, this is the edit function. So it gives us task id and priority is new priority. Okay, so for editing in this, okay, like, okay, we are going to I am going to explain this function last, because this is the toughest part, that what I feel. First, remove function. Let's see remove function, what the remove function say. Remove the task identified by task id from the system. It is guaranteed that task id is in the system. Okay, so let's see for remove function. So for remove function we given a task id 101. Okay, so to remove from our priority queue, our main tree map, we want two parameters, like first is task id and second is its priority, existing priority. So we have to create another map. So another map of, for every task id we want its priority. Okay, so this is the another map, and task id and priority both are of integer type, right? So this is the map of integer comma integer, and we are given name of this map is task id to priority. Okay, this is the second map that we need. Okay, so we are going to map everyone. Okay, so let's put this map or somewhere else. Okay, so let's put this map over here. Okay, so from this map in our task manager, what we can do, when we are traversing on our task, we can simply map our task with priority. Okay, so when we are traversing our in our task manager, we can simply put, and also in our add function we are going to map it with task id and priority. We are going to map. Okay, now to remove from our priority queue, we want two things, right? So first is task id. So task id is given, but the second thing is its priority. So we are getting the priority from our this map id to priority. Okay, task id to priority. So we get the priority, let's say priority p1. So now we can simply remove this object. So we can let's see the priority, let's expect the priority is 10. The old priority is 10, so we can simply remove from our priority queue. This is tree map of task and user id, so we can simply remove it. And also we have to remove this from our task to priority map. Okay, so we have to remove it from this map and this map, from both the map. Let's see for now for last function, the edit function. Okay, so edit function gives us two things. Okay, let's understand what the edit function says. So edit function, you are giving a task and new priority, update the priority existing task with new priority and guaranteed that the task id exists in the system. Okay, let's see. So you are given two things. So one is task id and its new priority. Now we have to update this into our in this map. Okay, so for getting this, for getting this tuple, this is like task id, but we also want the priority to get this tuple. Okay, 102 and 20. So what we can get, like task id is 102 and our old priority we can get from our task id to priority. So old was 20. Okay, so we can simply populate this tree map here. Okay, so for 101 the priority is 10, for 102 id the priority is 20, for 103 task id the priority is 15. So for 102 task, the old priority is 20, guys. Okay, so now this is the our object of task. Okay, so we can simply remove this from our map. So this is okay, so this is this tuple, so we can simply remove. Okay, so we removed it and we have to now put our new. So 102 comma 8 and uh, before removing we have to store the user id. Okay, so we are storing it with its previous user id. Okay, now our priority queue is again sort and this goes down, right? Now let's see, also we have to remove this old tuple from our map, like task id to priority queue. So we have to remove it. So we, after removing, and we have to update it so it's new priority. So this is our new priority. Okay, these two things we have to do. Okay, let's now see the code. So this is the code. Okay, so we have to create two maps. Okay, first is tree map of task object. Task object contains task id and the priority. We create the object here. Okay, and the name of this map is task queue. Okay, now the second map, we have to map our task id to its priority. Okay, so this is the second map, and now we have to initialize our tree map. Okay, task queue map. So we have to sort it according to the priority. If the priority is not same, we have to sort it according to the descending priority. That's why b minus priority minus a minus priority. If our priorities are same, then we have to sort it according to our task ids, whichever has the highest task id, we have to rank it up. Okay, so b minus task id minus a minus task id. Okay, and we have to initialize our task to priority map also. Okay, then we have to simply traverse on our tasks. So we get three parameters: user id, task id and priority. So we have to simply put in our task queue, our task object contains task id and priority, and we have to map it with user id. So we can return our user id in our execute top function. Okay, so in add function we have to simply add our task id, priority and user id, and also map it in our task to priority map. Okay, so now let's see our next function. This is edit function. So for edit, we want two parameter, task id and its old priority. So we can get our old priority from our task priority map to a task id to priority map. So we get the old id. So this is our object of task id and old priority. So we can now simply remove it. Okay, so and before removing we have to store our user id also. Okay, so and now we have to put our new task id and new priority. We are updating it with its original user id, and also we have to update it in our task priority map. Okay, now let's see removal function. If this task id is already removed, so we have to simply return. Okay, and now for removal we also want the priority, because in our uh, original map like task to queue map, we map with task id and priority. So we get the priority from our task priority map to task id to priority map. Okay, so we can simply remove it, and after removing it we have to also remove it from task priority map also. Okay, then our execute function, let's see, if there are no tasks available we have to return -1. Okay, so if our task queue is empty, then we have to return -1, and we have to return, we have to delete. Okay, so before that we have to delete also. We have to return the user id. So user id is nothing but task id and priority. Okay, so this is the tuple we get, like task id and priority. So user id is mapped with it. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, पेन की तरफ चली गई भाई. Okay, let's see. So let's see, this is, so we get our first tuple. So first tuple we have to return the user id. So user id is mapped with this object, task object. So we are going to store our user id, and then we are going to remove it. Okay, so we are just going to store our user id, then we are just going to remove it, and after removing we have to also remove it from our task to priority map, and after that we have to return our user id. Let's try to run it. Yeah, it is getting running. Okay, let's try to submit it. If you are new to the channel, make sure to like, share and subscribe. If you have any doubt, let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching.